Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my virtual environment for the semester. I like this little library room and I like the view out the window. Reminds me of the East Coast and all the trees that grow there. You'll see my cats occasionally jumping into my lap and scaring the heck out of me, and probably hear my dog barking in the background, but that's our reality these days, right? Welcome to week 2 of the assessments class. Right now, we're starting to dig into the nitty gritty of diagnostic categories. This week, we are looking at neurodevelopmental disorders. It's important that you read through each of the modules in the DSM, or actually each of the diagnostic categories here. So we have neurodevelopmental disorders this week, and most of these diagnoses in this category you will not be giving to clients. They come from a pediatrician or a child psychologist after testing. You need to be familiar with them, particularly with attention deficit disorder and learning disorders, because that's what you will see in the classroom. So all this extra stuff, and autism spectrum disorder is in this category as well. So you're going to see all these extra things that you wonder, wow, why do I need to know that? And even if it's not clear right now, do read through the entire chapter, make your notes so that you're familiar with this material. The things that will likely be on a LCSW exam are learning disorders, autism spectrum, and attention deficit disorder. But particularly if you work in a child setting, you need to be familiar with some of the other issues in here, like social communication disorder, learning disabilities, etc. So at the beginning of each category, I don't think I can, yes, there we go. This is going to look backwards here because of just the way cameras work, but at the beginning of each category, you'll have the diagnostic criteria, and it really is almost like a recipe for the symptoms, the signs and symptoms that the client reports and that you and others observe that make up whether or not this person officially has this diagnosis. Something I want you to be real familiar with in this category is that there is a high overlap in the symptoms between attention deficit disorder and trauma disorder in childhood. So take a look at the PTSD criteria specifically for children under 6 in the PTSD category, so that you can see what those symptoms are. And I think I've put a visual in this particular module so that you can see that, like, the inattention and the lack of concentration frequently are really symptoms of trauma in the children that we see versus attention deficit disorder. As you know, this disorder is highly overused in the school settings when children really are just unable to attend to what's going on in class, and they don't really have attention deficit, but they're in foster care, they've experienced trauma, or they're hungry, and these symptoms look very similar to attention deficit. So just keep a heads up about that. I'm going to be putting up a case study for this module. I didn't have one, I got one yesterday. And I am going to share my screen with you so we can look at the diagnostic criteria worksheet. So let me share my screen. Give us a second for that to work. There we go. And I'm going to maximize this so you can see the whole thing. So the diagnosis worksheet is, what symptoms does the client report? So symptoms are reported by the person who experiences them. What signs do you or others observe? The symptom and the sign is the behavior or the internal experience they have, such as a mood. Frequency, intensity, and duration are really important because these are frequently part of diagnoses. How often does it happen? How much does it happen? Or how severe is it? And how long has it happened? So this is just a way for you to begin to organize what you're observing in the case study and with others that you may see in the community. And this takes you through the process of developing a diagnosis. Given what you see here, what's the diagnoses, more than one you're considering? What other questions do you need to ask, and where do you need to get the information to obtain a clear picture? This is really what you do in developing a diagnosis, is get that kind of information. And then you get to the diagnostic formulation. Do you have enough information to support a particular primary diagnosis? If yes, what is it? What others do you have to consider first? So in that large chapter, or each section with a diagnosis, it says these symptoms are not better accounted for by some other diagnosis. So the ones you always have to consider is a medical condition and drug and alcohol intoxication. Not necessarily in this category, but if you're working with an adult, um, is there some kind of medical condition that you need to consider first? And that's something you always need to have in the front of your mind when you work with mental health diagnosing. Is there a sequencing required in this diagnosis? For instance, does this have to, I think in ADHD, the symptoms have to begin occurring before a certain age to use a diagnosis. So this is what you would need to consider. We're going to talk about specifiers in a couple of weeks and a secondary diagnosis in a couple of weeks. So really at the beginning, just start working with this worksheet. And this is just a way to help organize you, which is why I kept it posted. So download a blank one for yourself as a template and make sure that you're using it. I've also posted in the last discussion board for last week, the diagnosis worksheet for the older lady who was with whom the worker was doing an MMSE, so that you can see how to use that worksheet. So look in the discussion boards. If you have questions about the week, post your questions in the discussion boards. That's not a graded activity, but it's a place to share information. I drop into the discussion board every couple of days. Others of you take a stab at answering the person's question and see what you come up with. At the end of each week, I'll post my diagnosis worksheet for the case study so that you can see what it looks like. Also, you have another week to decide. I'm looking down at my notes. You have another week to decide what assignments you want to do. Here's the thing. If you're going to do the MMSE and one psychosocial assessment and the exam, you don't need to tell me, because at the end of 2 weeks, if I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume that that's what you're going to do. If you want to do 2 assessments instead of an exam, let me know. Or if you want to do a different activity, let me know. That way I can just make sure that folks are having the time to develop their assessments. I've also posted Zoom meetings for March 30th and April 3rd. That comes in next week's module. I post these optional Zoom meetings the week before a main assignment is due in this class, so that we have an opportunity to talk about the assignment and anything else that's coming up for you in the course. So I think that's it for the day. Just start digging into the readings and the videos and the diagnostic worksheets and the case studies. And I will talk to you guys soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.